The leaders of Turkey and Russia have agreed to a midnight ceasefire in Syria's Idlib province following a meeting in Moscow. Their deal also involves setting up a 12-kilometre wide security corridor along the highway linking Latakia to Aleppo. It will be jointly patrolled by Russian and Turkish troops starting on March the 15th. President Putin says he hopes the deal will end civilian suffering and help contain the humanitarian crisis. I'm joined now by Emre Erşen, an associate professor in the Political Science and International Relations Department of Marmara University. Thank you so much for your time, Emre. I was just looking at one of your tweets a few hours ago. You said ceasefire, de-escalation area and joint patrols seem to have become three indispensable key words of the Turkish-Russian summits in the last 3 years. It is something that we've heard time and time again. This is something that should have worked in the past. So why will this work this time?
Well, we don't really know whether it's going to work this time, I'm afraid. And as I also mentioned in my tweet, we hear these words over and over again when it comes to Turkish-Russian agreements signed with regard to Syria. And they also announced a document, as you know, at the end of the meeting. And in that document, they again make references to other two documents, one signed in May 2017 and the other in September 2018. So the Idlib problem was supposed to be solved back then. So the good thing about this latest document, however, is they finally announced the ceasefire, and this is something we really expected. And I think this is probably the only immediate outcome of this meeting. I think they're still working on solving their differences because there are significant disagreements between Turkey and Russia when it comes to the situation in Idlib. And I think this document and the summit also indicated that. The two leaders actually emphasized completely different things in their speeches. The Turkish leader making reference to the refugees and the Assad regime, and that is illegal actions, whereas for Russia it was quite important to fight the terrorists, and including some of the civilians that Turkey doesn't see as terrorists. So it's really a very complicated issue, I believe. So I think the following few weeks will be quite important for us to understand what really happened with regard to the situation in Idlib.
Now, Turkey finds itself in a bit of a sticky situation here because previously it's downed a Russian jet over Syria. Now it's moved closer together with its relations with Russia, buying this missile defense system from the country. All of a sudden, it looked like the two countries were going to get along better than ever. But then that schism has appeared where Russia is continuing to support Syria's Bashar al-Assad. And now this potential, if the relationship had deteriorated, for both Russia and Turkey to be at loggerheads with each other. How is this relationship, do you think it will either repair itself, or could we see it actually getting worse?
Well, I mean, nowadays, I think many people are focused on the Syrian issue for understandable reasons, and it really plays a very important role in the evolution of Turkish-Russian relations, especially in the last few years. But we also need to keep in mind that there are very significant economic links between Turkey and Russia, especially in the sphere of energy. Russia is building Turkey's first ever nuclear power plant, and at the same time, there is this Turk Stream natural gas pipeline, which is strategically very important for Russia. And Turkey also bought the S-400 missile systems from Russia, and we expect it's going to be activated in a few weeks. So when you think about the bigger picture in Turkish-Russian relations, I don't think they can sacrifice the relationship only due to their differences with regard to Syria. And Idlib is only one of them. They also have other kinds of disagreements which might turn into crisis in Syria, especially Russia's special relations with the YPG, which is regarded as a terrorist organization by Turkey. So all these are definitely complicating the fragile relationship between Turkey and Russia. But on the other hand, when you take a look at the economic links, but also maybe the strategic rapprochement that has been taking place between the two countries since 2016, it means a lot for both Moscow and Ankara, especially at a time when they have so many problems in their relations with the United States and the European Union. So again, if you think about the whole picture, I think it makes sense for them to try to overcome their differences in Syria.
But at the same time, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is calling on the European Union to support Turkey's actions in Syria. Now, Turkey and the EU have had a strained relationship, I think it's fair to say, over the past number of years. And the EU and Russia have also got a rather strained relationship. So how would that change things if all of a sudden the EU did give its backing for what's happening in northern Syria in relation to what's happening to Turkey? Would that muddy the waters, or do you think that would heap even more pressure onto Russia and Syria's Bashar al-Assad?
Well, I think Turkey's intention in this latest move to open its borders to the refugees was actually a move in order to exert more pressure on Russia rather than the European Union. And of course, it had direct implications for the EU countries, especially Greece and Bulgaria. But I think what the Turkish government expects regarding this is that the European countries, especially Germany and France, would put more pressure on Russia in order to stop its military operations in the Idlib province. Because as long as the military operations in Idlib continue by Russia and by the Assad regime, we know that the refugee crisis will get worse for Turkey, but also, again, indirectly for the European Union. So I think in that regard, we always need to remember that Turkish foreign policy is always trying to find the perfect balance between Russia and the NATO partners. So the European Union is one of that. And I think in this regard, the Turkish government believes the European Union might play a much more constructive role for the solution of the refugee crisis, but also in terms of becoming a major actor in Turkey's relations with Russia as well.
A role that is yet to be seen, but who knows, in the days and weeks ahead, that could certainly materialise. Emre Erşen joining us there, an international relations expert between Turkey and Russia.